Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. As you may know, Johnny Depp is the renowned Captain Jack Sparrow, held a terrible secret for decades. Additionally, a minute ago, he disclosed it to the world at last. Have you ever felt compelled to conceal something? Something intensely intimate, out of dread, humiliation, or just the dread that misinterpreted? You're most certainly not by itself. Even people who appear to possess it all determined, who reside in the spotlight, which can be used to convey quiet burdens. Additionally, Johnny's admission may be the most unexpected and poignant disclosure from a Hollywood legend to date who has consistently been full of mystery. Fans have conjectured for 4 years regarding Depp's mysterious character, his gentle interviews, his profound relationship to the character's headerpics, as well as his seeming withdrawn off-camera nature. What if everything, perhaps a portion of it, served as a disguise to safeguard anything very intimate? Something so unfiltered and early that he influenced the way he lived and how he constructed his profession. That's why this particular moment is so strong. For the first time in history, Johnny has revealed the truth, not for show, not for attention, but just to be true. And what he revealed has remained. Fans are stunned. Thus, this is how it unfolded. Moments ago, at a peaceful incident, in France that was virtually spontaneous, not a massive event on the red carpet, but more of an artsy rout from lights that flash, Johnny was present to discuss a new undertaking that holds great personal significance for him. As he responded to inquiries from a tiny circle of reporters, the atmosphere changed from business to personal when, "What's that?" someone said casually. "Something that your fans are still unaware of." "How about you?" There was a lengthy pause. Real pause. Not the type of quiet that occurs when someone looks for a smart way to say something, but the kind that occurs while someone is making a decision, whether to finally drop a weight too much time has been spent carrying. Then he said it in a low voice. "I've survived. I've had severe dyslexia all my life." For nobody spoke for a time. It was as though the space itself required a moment to catch up. Johnny continued after that. He described how, while growing up in Reading in Kentucky, was like attempting to decipher a strange tongue. Letters. On the page they danced. Directions didn't. And make sense. Even the most basic terms appeared to be puzzles. School was he recalled having a nightmare, feeling foolish, despite the fact that he knew in his heart that wasn't. However, as a child, being referred to as inattentive or lazy, since unable to read those labels like the others stick. Acting, he added, believe it, maybe not, turned into his way out. Although the majority actors examine texts, study scripts, and split lines, Johnny was forced to depend on anything distinct. Recollection, feeling, beat. He would play recordings of conversation, say them repeatedly, absorbing each pause and tone of voice. Prior to simply knowing the lines, he turned into them. Thus, he discovered how to prosper in a field that relies on a lot of reading. He didn't intend to cheat the procedure, stated. The goal was to survive it, and he concealed it from the directors, not outer producers, even close pals, out of self-preservation, but of dishonesty. He was already seen as out of the ordinary, a little enigmatic, in Hollywood's meticulously packed system, acknowledging that he had trouble reading, which could have altered everything. Thus, he constructed a persona, a shell, or a self-representation that might sidestep inquiries and bury the truth beneath wit, charm. However, when he became a father, Lily, his daughter, the first person he opened up to was Rose, to the fullest. She was perceptive, interested, and had gotten the empathy from her father. Johnny claimed that when she grew older, he didn't wish to conceal information from her. He said her regarding his dyslexia, and rather than responding with sympathy or worry, she was pleased. She informed him that disclosing it could be helpful to others, that susceptibility. It was strength, not weakness. It was that discussion that prompted him to begin considering in a different way. Perhaps, just possibly, Telling his tale might inspire someone else to the guts to share theirs. Furthermore, this wasn't merely a declaration of emotion. There was the content of his message. Johnny talked about the equipment evolved with time. He turned into adept at utilizing color filters to assist lessen the page's visual strain. Used recording equipment in the past to rerun scripts while strolling or driving. Occasionally, he would write out complete speeches by hand rather than reading, but to absorb them by means of the writing muscle memory. These weren't shortcuts or hacks. They were techniques developed out of need and resilience. According to experts, dyslexia doesn't demonstrate effort or intelligence. Dr. Kate Wendell is a neuropsychologist who's collaborated with creative experts has claimed for decades that dyslexia is just a distinct neural architecture. It frequently possesses a remarkable capacity to be creative, to think visually, and to feel the same way. Doesn't that describe department exactly? Starting with Edward Scissorhands, Willy Wonka, to Donnie Brasco, his layers have always been present in performances of depth, creativity, and subtlety. It now makes sense. He wasn't merely having fun, a portion. He was interpreting a universe that he was not always able to decipher what the rest of us sensed. And this is one more unexpected. Surprise, Johnny exposed. Music was a major component of his approach to managing his dyslexia. He would examine the lyrics, particularly those of vintage rock documents. As the songs played, he would read along, played, directing his actions with the beat comprehension of the text. It pivoted, reading about something fun instead of as opposed to stressful. That method, employing musicality and rhythm, are genuinely backed by studies. Research has demonstrated that reading with rhythm interventions can be quite beneficial. Individuals with dyslexia by bolstering the timing and sequencing abilities of the brain. Johnny also discussed the emotions, the weight of keeping this a secret for so long. Take a moment to consider what it must have as if I were Johnny Depp, a male loved all across the world, praised for his depth, skill, and adaptability, taking something that made him feel totally unworthy in private, for he worked for decades under the strain of being someone else. To the fans, he was brilliant. To the directors and producers, he took chances, and an artist who introduced unpredictability, splendor on the screen. However, on the inside, he harbored the oppressive worry that if people were aware of the full scope of his struggle, that he found reading challenging, a script, or required more hours of work to commit lines to memory, they might not respect, the same with him, that possibly the love that the world had for him was founded on a self-image that wasn't totally actual. Additionally, that type of emotional dissonance that persists for years and years doesn't simply exhaust you. It subtly alters your perception. The dread wasn't unreasonable for Johnny. The entertainment sector, as imaginative as it would appear at first glance, can frequently be brutally typical behind the scenes. It is anticipated that actors would hit their markers, deliver their lines using accuracy, and accomplish this under amazing time constraints. A handicap related to learning, such as dyslexia, doesn't easily fit into that planet. It requires more time, tolerance, and items that are frequently lacking on a tight budget production timetable. So what did Johnny do? A lot of individuals in his situation might. He concealed it. He acquired compensatory skills, how to pass for someone else, how to survive without exposing the truth to everyone. He compared it to acting out a part. Not all the time, but only on set. Even in press trips, interviews, and informal discussions on the set. He was always on, preserving the distinction between his identity and who he was perceived to be. He said, regarding how alienating that was, rather than because he wasn't treated with kindness. In reality, he claimed to be fortunate to collaborate with many smart and caring partners. However, because while you're concealing something, even being kind similar to a danger. If someone gives you a compliment, readiness, your meticulousness, or your commitment, a part of you feels as though a phony. You nod, smile, and acknowledge the commendation. But you're screaming inside. If only you understood how difficult this is form. I wish you could understand how afraid I am. Thing you will discover. That's what makes concealing a very terrible fight. It's not only the weight of the actual battle, it's the consistent display of acting as though it doesn't exist. Johnny mentioned that one of the most challenging aspects was the impact of dyslexia on his self-worth, particularly when one is young, individual. He recalled being referred to as lethargic, preoccupied, and even incompetent in the classroom. Not that he wasn't making an effort, but due of his inability to keep up in the conventional manner. Those labels, he said, adhered to him like adhesive for a long time after he departed from the classroom. Even when he was standing on a platform to accept honours or reading excellent evaluations of his work, still had a piece of him that felt not worthy. The child within you who felt stupid and had trouble with letters due to the inability to read aloud, similar to. The other children never completely disappeared. He simply became more adept at concealing them. He characterized the internal struggle as draining. Externally, he was prospering, appearing in popular movies, constructing enduring personalities, exploring the globe. On the inside, however, he felt as though he was constantly preparing for influence. Waiting for someone to arrive would draw back the curtain to reveal the imperfect, nervous individual beneath the self-assured exterior. This wasn't merely insecurity. It was a persistent, ingrained dread of being seen. A concern that the profession, he had put a lot of effort into developing his disintegrate if the truth was revealed. Additionally, 4 years, that anxiety determined how he engaged with the outside world. He said a tally that made the point very clear. In the early years of his acting career, he received an ultimatum scene rework, anything that occurs frequently, in movies and TV. For Johnny, however, it wasn't relearning lines is all that is required. It entailed facing a wall of words that felt like a confused, unintelligible mess. He seemed visibly alarmed about, of course. He accepted the script and nodded, went away as if nothing had happened. However, within him was spiraling. He spent the following few spending time alone himself in his trailer, reading and reading the lines again and dissecting them phonologically, learning them by hearing instead of sight. Then he started to walk, entered the set, gave the performance, and nobody was aware of the distinction. That's what he said, was the tragedy as well as the victory of it. He was always capable of doing it, but how much it costs. Not until a long time after, following his fatherhood, he started to comprehend the harm that such hide can work. Observing his kids as he grew older, he realized how much. The bravery required to show vulnerability, to request assistance by saying, this is difficult for him. He understood that if he desired to be the type of parent who supported, he required self-acceptance and honesty to serve as his own personal model for those things. That's when he started the agonizingly slow procedure of removing the mask. Additionally, even it took years after that, years prior to his prepared to publicly say it aloud, because despite all of his accomplishments, the small voice that suggested he wasn't sufficient, yet it was nevertheless muttered in the rear of his thoughts. However, when I finally shared it, and it was incredible, occurred. Rather than facing criticism, he was taken in arms. Rather of being perceived as weak, he was admired for his bravery. Supporters started sharing their personal narratives about having difficulty at school, feeling misinterpreted, fighting embarrassment over things over which they had no control, and Johnny understood that he was not alone. Far away from it. Actually, his tale had the ability to give people a sense of visibility, perhaps for the first time. That is vulnerability's power. It binds us. It serves as a reminder that they are, not the only ones with invisibility burdens. Furthermore, Johnny Depp is a man who made a living by portraying characters. Revealing his true tale could be the most outstanding performance by everyone. He said. One of his greatest concerns was being perceived as unable. Many believe that dyslexia is simply jumbling up letters. However, it's more than that. It's self-doubt, It's unfortunate. It's being told you're not trying for years difficult. Enough. Those were harsh statements. Not only for Johnny, but also for everybody who's always endured the burden in silence of being misinterpreted. It's one thing to difficulty processing or reading words. Being judged for it is a different matter. To be written off as irresponsible, lazy, or stupid. That was his intention. When dyslexia, he claimed, is more than a learning theory. Chaos. It becomes a prism through which you think about yourself. And that lens can cause distortion. Everything. When Johnny stated that, there was a certain quietness in the space. You could sense the seriousness of the emotions in the manner in which he said it, not with bitterness, yet with a taciturn candor that added to it, powerful. The reporters who were. According to reports, some individuals clearly broke, down in tears. Additionally, when the clip struck, it was like a dam broke on the internet. Individuals from diverse backgrounds, learners, parents, educators, and even experts in the entertainment sector, started saturating the comment areas with their personal narratives. Narratives of hardships in school, even though you're working harder, more than anyone knew. Narratives concerning being referred to as slow or foolish by teachers, or even fellow students. Narratives regarding bearing the embarrassment of not fitting into a rewarding system. Just one intellect of some sort. What was? The tone of these was extraordinary. Answers. They had no resentment. They were appreciative. I'm thankful that someone such as Johnny Depp, a man whose ability could legendary charisma, had retreated. The drape and uttered, me also. That feeling of common humanity, of recognizing that even those we look up to confront the same personal conflicts, is restorative. People claimed that they felt seen at last, that Johnny's confession allowed them to halt hiding. I've spent my entire life, one person wrote, living as though I wasn't having any difficulties. I believed that I needed to hide it to be prosperous. Listening to Johnny discuss so candidly, it felt heavy. Lifted off my chest, said another. With dyslexia, my kid has always felt as if there were a problem with him. I displayed this movie to him, and for the first, I once noticed pride in his eyes. That's the vulnerability's knock-on impact. When someone we respect expresses their truth, it creates room for others to follow suit. Johnny failed to provide a polished motivational speech. He talked from experienced life with all of its messiness as well as resiliency and fear. Additionally, due to that sincerity, his remarks struck where necessary, within the hearts of those who most needed to hear them. What he disclosed was not merely an individual battle, it was a group effort. The reality that far too many individuals bear in silence. And today, because of his bravery, that quiet is at last shattering. Furthermore, Johnny didn't end there. His own narrative. He took use of this opportunity to promote change, particularly in educational institutions. If he had been, he said, appropriately identified as a child and provided with support instead of condemnation, items might have been quite different. He desires children nowadays to understand that being unique is not a defect. Frequently, it is a superpower, awaiting discovery. We must cease making kids feel broken for having a different way of studying, he stated, since once people begin to believe that it's challenging to reverse. This potent message is delivered at a period when more well-known people are speaking up about learning and dyslexia limitations, ranging from Richard Branson to the Steven Spielberg, Whoopi Goldberg. However, someone heard it from Johnny Depp, whose entire profession centers on the written word, lends it a very intimate quality. Twist. He doesn't provide inspirational speeches. He has nothing to sell. He's only at last. The man lifted the curtain. A portion he has kept himself hidden for too long. Lengthy. Now that everyone is aware of what follows, this might be the beginning of a fresh chapter. One that he leans against, advocacy. One in which he quits acting. Everything is flawless and begins relating to others by using the truth instead of mystery. And to be honest, fans are adoring it. Something is there. The sight of it is revitalizing and even therapeutic. Someone so esteemed discloses that they're people. If you were moved by this story, consider the individuals in your own life. Perhaps a child, a partner, or a friend who battles in silence. Perhaps even you. If you stopped concealing, what would happen? If you were honest like Johnny did? The boldest thing we can do at times, acknowledge that we're still working things out. And let's continue this discussion. What emotion did you once experience, feeling embarrassed, but now accepting? Which instruments or mentalities enabled you to get past it? Drop your tales in the comments section. You never understand who might need to hear the specifics of You Must Speak. Additionally, if this video spoke to you, you'll undoubtedly wish to read our upcoming article. It explores the true cause of Johnny's attitude changed so drastically throughout the legal disputes and what the general people didn't look past those headlines. The link is waiting for you right here. And hey, if you liked this honest, unvarnished look into the life of Johnny, think about contributing. I like this. Consider subscribing if you're not yet. Press the bell symbol, so you won't want to miss the following tale that simply may alter your perspective on the world. I appreciate you spending time with me today. I'm so happy you're here. I'll see you in the following one.